A very good morning to everyone, all the educators from Chinese school across the country. We're just waiting for the numbers to go up and then we will start the session. Can people just confirm in the chat that we're audible? Thank you so much for the confirmation. We'll just wait another 5 minutes and then we'll be ready to go. Alright, I guess we can get started. Firstly, a very good morning to all the educators from Chinese school across the country. In light of the upcoming entry of girls in Senior schools, we are delighted to be a part of the gender sensitization initiative at Senior schools. At the outset, I would like to thank Senior School Society and Colonel Rajesh Benda for helping us organize the event. A little bit about the organization. Ijaazat was founded on a strong belief that every space should hold equal opportunity irrespective of your gender or sexuality. We at Ijaazat work to create an equitable landscape for all genders and sexuality and break the existing phobia around the subject in academic spaces. Today's session is being conducted by two of our in-house psychologists. Firstly, Ms. Shruti Pokhriyal. She is a counseling psychologist and an intersectional and anti-caste feminist. And secondly, Ms. Prerna, sorry, Ms. Anaga, who is also a counseling psychologist. Ms. Shruti and Anaga, you can start the session. Thank you so much for being part.
Manya, can you just share the presentation?
Yeah.
So before we get into the presentation and everything, I would just like to take a moment to thank all of you for being here, because we know that conversations about sex and gender and all of these things need to be started very early on in children's lives, so they are able to take these ideas and use them later on in their life while they're exploring themselves, finding out their identity. And the fact that the teachers are present here, the fact that you're willing to be here because of the students and also because you want to learn new things yourself, I think it's a great thing. And I just want to take a moment to thank all of you for being here.
Shruti, the stream is now visible on the screens, so you can start.
Can we also?
Could you also just switch it on your phone so that it's visible to you as well?
Okay, just give us a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving forward, Siddharth, can you forward the presentation? One slide. Okay. So, before we get into anything else, before we get into the actual content of the presentation, I would just like to talk about this concept, which is very famous in people who study sex and gender. So, the concept is known as the charm circle. Charm circle is a term which was coined by Dr. Gail Rubin, and to talk about sex and sexuality, to understand the way that sex is viewed in our society. So the inner circle within the charmed circle, where is characterized as being good, as being normal, acceptable, where heterosexual, male dominated, good monogamous sex takes place. And all the outer circles is everything, it includes everything that is considered to be bad and, in the outer limits. So if we and then the charm circle is not just something which can be used to study sex and sexuality. It can be applied to a lot of different concepts, to a lot of different things like gender and like the gender roles in our society. So, um, when we talk about the charm circle in this concept, so people who adhere to the genders that were assigned to them at birth, people that grow up and they continuously fit into the gender binaries growing up, people whose gender expression matches their assigned sex as birth and the expectations of the society for that particular gender role, these people can be said to fall within the charm circle. And when you're in the charm circle, you enjoy certain privileges in the society, you enjoy certain concessions, certain good things that come with this because you are seen as being normal, as being good. And then all the people who fail to fit into these categorizations, these small boxes that the society deems as good and normal, these people, they suffer a lot of discrimination, ostracization. They are outcasted, they're on the outer lines of the society. So before we go forward, before Anagha takes over and we talk about all the concepts, it's important to remember the charm circle. It's important to realize where we fit in to the charm circle. Are we privileged? Are we not? Do we fall into the outskirts of this social privilege, the social capital, or do we fit within the charm circle? Okay, let's move forward, and Anagha will take it forward from here.
Thank you, Shruti. So, next slide. So, we'll be talking about gender now. What is gender? So, there is usually a misconception that both gender and sex are the same thing. So, are they actually different or are they the same? That's what we are going to explore right now. Okay. So, talking about this, sex is a label that is assigned to the baby when they're born by a doctor based on their genitals. Okay, so when a baby is born, the sex assigned can be male, female, or intersex. Okay, so it is based on the genitals and the chromosomes that a baby is born with. And coming to gender, gender is a very complex concept. That means gender has nothing to do with biological orientation. It is more of a the social construction. Okay, so gender, if we have to explain it, gender is kind of an internal experience or a person's deeply held internal sense of self. And it is very, very important to know that meaning associated with a particular identity, okay, can vary among individuals using the same term. Okay, so gender, the just a minute. Okay. So gender, like it says, gender is much more complex. It is a social and legal status and a set of expectations from society about behaviors, characteristics, and thoughts. And it's all about the social practices or the culture or cultural beliefs that shape our gender. Okay, and it is thus we can say that sex is based on the biological orientation or something that is assigned to us based on our genitals or that is assigned to us by birth, whereas gender is developing, it's dynamic. Okay, it is a social construction. Okay, now when we meet a person, next slide, when we meet a person for the first time, we automatically look for gender cues. Okay, this might happen not consciously but unconsciously. Mostly, this might happen unconsciously. Like we don't even know that we are looking for gender cues. Okay, for example, it is so automatically happening. For example, when we see a person, we ask for their names. Okay, we ask for their names. We look for their like we see their dressing styles. We see their hair. We see how they act, how they behave, everything. And based on these characteristics, we tend to assume that this person belongs to this kind of okay, this person belongs to this gender. Okay, so it's just that we judge their gender based on the gender cues that we understand or we look for. Okay, it is so automatically happening and it all these happens in split seconds. Okay, and we do this like a dozens of times every day. Okay, so if some of the usual things are like when we see a person and if the person has say long hair. Okay, and the person is wearing salwar or a dress, or if the person is wearing makeup, okay, then we automatically assume that person to be female, right? Or if the person has broad shoulders, ball cap, buzz cut, and yeah, then that person is a male. See, these are like the gender cues that we look for. Okay, so these are some of the things that we look for, and we automatically arrive at conclusions that okay, this person belongs to this gender. So are we doing it right? Okay, it's high time that we consider this. We need to reconsider this. Okay, so gender roles in society means how we are expected to act or speak or dress, groom, or like how we behave, how we should behave based on our assigned sex. Okay, so what we need to understand is that it is when we assign or when we assume gender based on our assigned sex or the consequences, or we give them specific roles based on the assigned sex. This is what results in what we call as gender stereotyping. Okay, so the consequence of gender role is always gender stereotyping. Okay, so a gender stereotype is a widely held belief or like a generalization about behaviors and characteristics attributed to women and men. So we always consider, this is also a stereotype, we always consider gender to be in binaries, like it's either a man or a woman. Okay, so it is always considered in a dichotomous way. Okay, so when we think gender to be dichotomous or like a black and white, okay, it is very, very limiting for people of all genders. Okay, and these gender stereotypes can have an adverse effect on all genders, right? Because these gender stereotypes tell people, both men and women or any genders, of on how they should act, like how boys should behave, how girls should behave, how girls should look like, how they should play, what kind of dress they should wear, right? So it's all limiting them. Okay, they are limited on all these stereotypes. So they also shape their self perception and their attitudes to relationships and influence participation in the world of work. And also, the assumptions that we make about boys and girls may be conscious or unconscious and can result in students being treated differently, even in the classrooms. For example, the general one. I'll give you an example, like in classrooms. So this is something seen very, very usual in classrooms. So in classrooms, when we uh, yeah when there is something or some work happening that is related to physique. Okay, so when the for example, we need to lift a bench or something to do with physique, the teachers will automatically look for boys, right? So what teachers will usually say that a few boys please come and help me to lift this benches, right? So yeah, so it's stereotyped in our mind that boys are physically stronger than girls. Okay, so anything to do with the physique are automatically assigned to boys, not girls. So there are boys who are not that physically like healthy, and there are girls who are physically healthy than boys. So it is better to stop these binaries or putting all these things into two boxes and come out of it. And it's high time we need to see it as a continuum. Okay, it is not, we should stop categorizing, okay, these are for boys, these are for girls. No, we should stop that. Okay, now every person is either male or female and the distinction is based on that person's anatomy. Is it a myth or a fact? Okay, so like I said before, gender seem very simple, but the myths surrounding this concept is very, very complex usually. So, there are a lot of myths surrounding this concept of gender, and experts who work on this concept says that there are two most common myths that exist here. One is like gender is binary, and the second one is gender and sex are the same thing. First one, gender is binary. This is a myth. Gender is not binary. Okay, so to comprehend what gender and sexual binaries are, it is important to understand that gender is a continuum, or gender is a spectrum. Okay, for I know for a very long time, all the institutions, say government, medical systems, even our parents thought that gender is binary. Both gender and sex are binary. But if we look at science, okay, this is not biologically correct. Okay, this is not biologically or medically accurate. Okay, gender is not binary. People identify their genders at different points between male and female and also outside this continuum. Okay, now gender and sex are the both are the same thing. That is also another myth. Like I have already explained it before, gender and sex are not the same thing. Gender is a social construction. Gender is how we identify ourselves. Okay, based on our experiences or internal feelings. Whereas sex is completely biological. It's based on our genitals and chromosomes. Okay. Now, gender and sexual binaries. To comprehend what the gender and sexual binaries are, it is very important to understand sex and gender, what is sex and gender, and how they are different. Okay, sex is genetic, while gender is a social construct, like I already said. So, sex is determined whether an individual was born with X chromosome or a Y chromosome, whereas gender, on the other hand, is not related to individual's biology, but on the role they choose to play in society. So, gender binarism is the classification of gender into two distinct opposite forms like masculine or feminine, right? Which can either be based on the social systems or practices or cultural beliefs. In the binary model, it is assumed that not in like every society, if we believe in the binaries, they tend to automatically assume that gender, sex, and sexuality, gender, sex, and sexuality should be aligned. All these should be same, right? So if a person is born, like when a baby is born, the sex assigned is male, that baby is expected to identify their gender as a man. Okay, this is what society expects in a binary system. Okay, that baby is expected to identify their gender as man and also identify themselves as a heterosexual. Now, this is what is happening in our society. So, when like I said, it can influence expectations about how the person dresses, talks, behaves, or social settings, and deals with emotional distress. But what is true is that sex characteristics and all this gender tend to be bimodal, meaning there are clusters of characteristics that tend to be associated with people. So um, on average, men tend to have XY chromosomes, and women tend to have XX chromosomes. Like most of you might be knowing that. However, sex chromosomes come in a wide variety as well, with at least like 16 different actually occurring variations. This means that chromosomal presentation itself is not binary either. Okay. Now, like I said, when a baby is born, it can fall into male, female, or intersex. Now, this intersex is not an exception or a deviation. It is also very common. Current research estimates that intersex people compose 1.7 percentage of the population, which makes being intersex about as common as having red hair. Okay, so the thing is, though we think that intersex is the like society believes that intersex is a deviation and corrective surgeries are done. So huge debate is still going on, controversies are still going on the corrective surgeries, and there is even an organization for the people who identify themselves as intersex. Okay, next slide. So, what we're trying to say is that when we talk about the bimodal system, in every person, there is it is a mixture of both male and female, right? For example, on average, men tend to have more facial and body hair than women, and but there are also women with coarse and dense body hair, and there are men who can't grow a full beard. So that doesn't mean, like for example, when there is a man without a beard, like who isn't able to grow a full beard, doesn't make him any less of a man, right? So it there is no such standard scale or like a measurement that okay, if you fall into these categories, or if you are up to this, okay, then you are a man. If you are falling into, if you have this, you are a woman. No, nothing like that. So it is like a bimodal system. It is a spectrum. Okay, and also on average men tend to be taller than women, but there are most certainly women that are taller than some men. Okay, if skeletal structure, like I said now, was binary, then all men would have to be taller than all women, which of course they are not, right? Okay, so coming to the scientific understanding of binaries. Okay, so the belief that sex and gender are based on binary division is a rudimentary idea. Okay, that does not have a place in the current discourse. Gender roles and gender expressions are a product of cultural interpretations of the concept of gender, and they are bound to change with the time. Like cultures are dynamic forces, and they are not restrictive and binding. And thus, with cultural ideas and practices, our understanding of the gender is also likely to change. And it should change. We need to understand that everything is bound to change, right? Now, sex is something which is determined by an individual's biology and how their genes interact with each other. It is thought to be extremely predictable and based on binary system as well. But even something which seems as simplified as an individual's body parts cannot be broken down into binary systems. So, so in this picture, you can see that the person, these people were assigned male assigned to the sex of male when born, but they identify or they like to express their gender in different forms. Okay. Now understand that this is not a deviation. This is completely normal. Okay. It is common understanding now that sex also, like gender, exists on a spectrum which goes way beyond just male or female. Okay. And like I said, this is very, very true for the people who are assigned intersex at the birth. Now, what we need to understand is, like I said, since there are corrective surgeries that are happening when a person is born as an intersex, uh, the actual statistics that is shown here can be skewed. Like it can be way lesser than the actual number of intersex people, because after the corrective surgery, they are again bought into or put into these binaries. So we don't know what is actually happening, right? So now it is also important to note that uh, it is also important to know that could be numerous cases of subtle forms of sex variations that do not show up until later in life and thus remain unaccounted and unidentified. So, as explained by these examples, gender is not binary because it cannot be grouped into two separate or non-overlapping groups. Okay. Now, in the parlance of gender development, next slide. So, in the picture, you can see that that diagram. It is actually very similar to what we call as a gender-bred person. If you have seen that, okay. So, can you go to the next slide? So, yeah, gender-bred person. So, in that, uh, what we need to understand is that like how it shows in the picture, ge- gender gender is what we understand or what we feel about ourselves, what we are. It's about our inner feelings. Okay. And sex is all about what we are assigned at birth. It is all about the biology based on your genitals. Okay. Now sexual orientation is all about our attraction towards others, like how we feel, the romantic attraction that we have for others. Okay, so this can be like if a person is attracted to another person belonging to their own sex. Okay, that person is known as homosexual. Or if the person gets attracted to a person belonging to another sex, then that person is considered to be heterosexual, right? So sexual orientation is all about romantic attraction. Now gender identity. So gender identity is how like I said, how we understand or how we express, how we understand and how we feel about ourselves. And gender expression is all about how we express or how we showcase our feelings, how we like to dress, how we like to uh, show up, or how we like to act or behave in a society based on our feelings. That's all about gender expression. Okay. So, thus, in describing the terms sex and gender, it is important to note that the word sex describes biological differences between people, while the term gender is a broader term that reflects how a person lives within a society. Okay. Next slide. So, are we born with a gender? So, for most, it's birth, sex, and gender really matches. Like that's how the society says, at least. Okay. So, the people who identify their gender in line with their birth sex is called as cisgender. Whereas people who doesn't identify, okay, who doesn't identify with the sex that they are born with is what we call as transgenders. Okay. Now, what we need to understand is that it is not necessary that everyone fall into this gender or transgender. It is a spectrum. It is a continuum. Okay. So the sense of gender exists between this continuum. Okay, between male and female. Okay, anywhere it can exist at any points between these two, or even outside this continuum. Okay, who doesn't identify to any of the genders. Okay, so like gender queer people, not binary people. Okay, so uh, like I said, gender is understood as spectrum. people can identify gender between these points, like at any point between these two in the continuum or outside this continuum. Okay? So what we need to understand is that gender is a spectrum, okay, and it is highlighting that we all adapt or understand the gender identity as a spectrum or continuum also. Okay, so the gender spectrum is an understanding that gender is not binary, but a spectrum of biological, mental, and emotional traits that exist along a continuum. So most people feel that they are a male. Some people feel a masculine female or a feminine male. Some people like they feel neither male or female. So the people who doesn't identify themselves in this continuum use their labels such as gender queer or gender data. So it is. We all need to understand that it's completely healthy, it's completely normal to fall into any of the points in this continuum or outside this spectrum. Okay, so the rigid expectations of a birth need not necessarily match my understanding of who I am. Okay, now I invite Shruti to continue the session with the topic patriarchy.
Can we just move the slide ahead? I guess it's still on the previous one.
Hey Shruti, can you see the slide now? What is patriarchy? What does patriarchy mean to you?
So before I start talking about patriarchy and all the things that come with it, I would just like to focus once again on the charm circle. And before we attempt to understand what patriarchy is and how do we define it, it's important to try to remember when we fit into the charm circle. If you are a man, if you identify as a man, if you identify as a male, you probably fall in the inner circles of the charm circle. If you identify as a woman, the way you understand patriarchy, the way you understand genders and sex might be a little different from someone who it's still stuck on the expression and gender identity for me. I don't know if it's running for everyone.
Hold on a second.
Can try to remove the presentation and share it again. Maybe that would.
Yeah. Yeah, Shruti, just a second. I think we are running into some technical issues right now. Hello? Yes. Yeah, I'm just looking at the technical issue. Okay.
It on the patriarchy slide now.
Yeah. Can you see Shruti? Please confirm. Hello?
Yeah. So there are some technical issues with the presentation, but while that gets sorted out, we'll move ahead the content. So before talking about patriarchy and all these things, it's important for us to understand where we fit into society. If you've grown up as a man, if your gender is assigned at birth was, if gender assigned at birth was male, and if you've grown up identifying as a man, then you're, just give me a minute. No, I get just stuck for me there. I'll start to reload it. It's still on the gender is a spectrum 1.
Shruti, can you try and refresh your page?
It's on gender is spectrum side. It's still not on there. What happens if I share it? Can I share it?
Yeah, try if you can share. Hello. Shruti, are you hearing? Hi, Shruti, you can share your screen and share the slides.
I have been refreshing it. I think what happens if I share it will be visible.
Yes. Can you share screen?
Give me a minute.
Hello, hi. Can you share your screen and share the slides there?
Now is it visible clearly?
I can't see your screen still.
It's visible on the Google Meet, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure if it is visible on YouTube. I can't see it on YouTube.
I have shared my screen.
Yeah, just taking confirmation on the chat.
Let me just check on YouTube. Siddharth, I guess you will have to stop sharing on YouTube.
Shruti's presence is not visible on YouTube.
It's still I am sharing my screen.
Shruti, can you go forward with the slides? Like, we'll.
Okay, so let's just start again. We can. Okay, so we've talked about what patriarchy is, how do we identify patriarchal norms, and how do we challenge them. Challenging norms basically just means that we call out whenever we see people engaging in any kind of discrimination, whenever we see people talking about sex and gender in a way that is not very informed, it's important for us to reflect on what we've learned about sex, about gender, and then it's important for us to educate the people around us. Because these ideas will only gain widespread acceptance when everyone around us is talking about them. Everyone around us is able to understand what we're trying to learn here. So it becomes important for us as educators to talk about these ideas within our classrooms with children, to be open with them, to answer their questions, and to be accepting of any kind of doubts, any kind of questions, any kind of problems they might have, understanding these concepts. Then coming to gender roles and how they affect us. Siddharth, can you move to the slide about gender stereotypes and mental health? Talking about gender stereotypes. So, a stereotype is something which is a fixed or an overgeneralized belief about a particular group of people. Stereotypes allow our brain to process information very effectively, very efficiently, and to respond quickly to the situations that we have seen before. But stereotypes do not only allow us to be more free, to be more fast with our processing, they also come with certain disadvantages. A major drawback of stereotypes is that they make us ignore differences between people. We try to club people into groups within our brains because it makes it easier for us to understand people. When they're all belonging in a group, we can understand them as a group and view the group as having certain characteristics instead of trying to understand each and every person based on their individual characteristics. It makes the processing easier for us, it makes it faster for us. Then, but it also makes us see people in a way that might not be true. The use of stereotypes is a major way in which we simplify our social world. It reduces the amount of processing that we have to do when we meet a new person. We can simply rely on the information that we already have about the social groups. Then coming to gender stereotypes. Gender stereotypes are simplistic generalizations about a group of people, and gender stereotypes are simplistic generalizations about gender attributes, about the differences between genders, about the roles of individuals and the groups that they belong to. So these stereotypes are not necessarily negative. They can either be positive or they can be negative, but what they are is inaccurate. This is something we can always say with certainty, is that they're not very accurate. When people automatically apply gender assumptions to others, regardless of evidence, they are perpetuating gender stereotyping. And many people might recognize the gender dangers of gender stereotyping, and yet they continue to make these generalizations. They continue to view people as being falling into two boxes. You're either a man or you're either a woman. If you're a man, you're supposed to dress a certain way. If you're a woman, you're supposed to dress a certain way. It's dangerous when we try to fit people into boxes, when we try to fit people into neat categories. It is dangerous and it is a disservice to an individual who might express himself or herself in numerous ways than just fitting into a particular box. Coming to stereotypes. Traditionally, the stereotypes associated with women are to marry, to have children. A woman is seen as someone that has to put her family's welfare before her own. She has to be loving, she has to be compassionate, she has to be gentle, soft, delicate, nurturing, sympathetic, and she also has to find time to feel beautiful, to feel desirable. The male stereotype then is to be the financial provider, is to take care of everyone, to protect everyone. A man has to be assertive, to be competitive, to be independent, courageous, A man shouldn't be afraid of anything. A man shouldn't cry for anything. A man shouldn't be emotional. And he has to be career focused. He has to constantly keep his emotions in check. And a man is also seen as someone who wants a lot of sexual intimacy. And a woman is seen as someone who should not want these things, but should be able to provide these things to her husband if a man wants it. Coming to gender stereotypes and mental health, how do these stereotypes about gender, about sex, about where do we fit in the society affect us personally? So there is a lot of scientific evidence which indicates that children learn gender stereotypes from adults. Just like gender roles, socializing agents like parents, teachers, peers, religious leaders, and whatever children see in the media, they pass along gender stereotypes from one generation to the next. Gender stereotypes are not just ideas about what men and women are supposed to do, how they're supposed to live their lives. They're kind of like rules, unwritten rules that everybody has to follow. And if you don't follow them, you will be punished. They are extremely restrictive. They are based on very simplistic cultural ideas about cultural myths about how men and women are supposed to behave. And they can become harmful for individuals because they stifle the personal expression and the creativity of a person. They can also hinder our personal and professional growth. So, then what happens with people who do not conform to these gender ideas and gender roles is that they are punished. They are socially punished, they are socially ostracized, they are removed from the society, they are treated as outcasts within their own homes, within their own families, and then wherever they go, they are treated as outsiders. So when people do not live up to society's standards of what a man and women are supposed to look like, they might harm themselves emotionally or physically. For example, a boy that is not very that is very skinny, a boy that is very thin, he does not feel masculine enough because he wants to bulk up, he wants to have muscles, he wants to be strong, or then he might try to hurt his body, try to take certain kinds of medications, drugs in order to make his body different. Or a girl who constantly sees images of models, of people who fit a certain body type in the media, in magazines, in newspapers, that girl is very likely to develop an eating disorder because she feels so much pressure from everyone to lose weight or to look a certain way. So, traditional gender roles do not only impact our mental health, they also impact how we view ourselves and how, if we accept ourselves as the person that we are or not. We constantly have to follow gender norms. Even if we don't agree with them, we have to put up a performance for society, for everyone around us. And it can make us feel uncomfortable if I constantly have to do something that I am not okay with, something that I do not think is okay, something that I do not think is important for me. It can make me feel uncomfortable in my own body. And I might become extremely vulnerable because I will not be able to accept myself because of how I'm behaving. I'm not behaving in a way that is congruent with myself. I'm behaving in a way that everyone around us wants me to behave in. Then coming to how do these things affect us? If we talk about their impact on men, men are often taught not to share emotions. Men are taught that they should not show weakness in front of anyone ever. Mard ko dard nahi hota. These kind of stereotypes perpetrated about men, about whoever identifies as men. It just means that men are less likely to talk about the things that are affecting them. And then they become less likely to seek mental health care. If they are going through something, if they are experiencing something which is extremely distressing to them, they will not reach out to someone or talk to someone. Statistics show that 1 in 4 women seek treatment for depression and at some point in their lives, compared to only 1 in 10 men. It is a big difference. It just indicates that men do not feel free to talk about the issues that are bothering them because they might be seen as being too sensitive, being too emotional, being weak. Now, this could also be because women might suffer more from depression, more than men. But it's highly likely that it is partially also because men do not feel free enough, do not feel comfortable enough to seek help when they need it. This indicates how excessively damaging and harmful gender stereotypes are. It's not just about the colors that we are supposed to wear, it's not just about uh, things that happen around us. It also starts affecting our lives. It also starts affecting how we deal with weird situations, how we deal with distressing situations in our lives. Then, coming to, can we move on to the next slide, which talks about gender based violence? So, gender violence is something which is dictated by a person's gender. A person who suffers who suffers violence only because of their gender, in that instance, it would be called gender-based violence. So, gender violence includes rape, sexual assault, intimate partner violence in heterosexual and same-sex partnerships, sexual harassment, stalking, prostitution, sex trafficking. It is one of the most prevalent or pervasive types of human right violations in the world. It has no social, economic, or national boundaries. It happens everywhere in all societies, in all countries, no matter how progressive or how modern that society is. So worldwide, an estimated 1 in 3 women or sexual abuse in their lifetime. 1 in 3 is a huge number. Coming to the term gender violence, it reflects the idea that violence often serves to maintain structural gender inequalities. And it includes all types of violence against men, women, children, adolescents, gay, transgender people, and gender non-conforming people. We can apply we can apply the concept of charm circle to understand this kind of violence. This kind of violence, in some ways, it influences or is influenced by gender relations and the ideas of gender within the society. It does arise out of a need. It does not arise out of a need to be sexual, out of a need to have sex. That is not why women are raped. That is not why someone is sexually assaulted, because of someone feeling sexual. It happens in an attempt to establish dominance over women, over people who are weaker than us. And to adequately address this violence, we have to address the cultural ideas about masculinity and about femininity, about ideas that say that men have to be violent and aggressive and outrageous with everything that they do. Then, gender based violence is something that undermines the health and dignity and security of victims. And yet, it remains shrouded in a culture of silence. We hardly talk about it as a society, within our families, within our friend circles. It is something which is very, very pervasive. 1 in 3 women, so many women go through it, but nobody talks about it. Nobody talks enough about it. It is not frequent. It is something which is not talked about often or enough, considering how frequent and how pervasive it is. Now, applying these ideas about gender and gender related violence in schools. If this happens in a learning environment, it can have very real consequences in people's life, ranging from low self esteem and depression to early unintended pregnancy and sexually transmitted infections like HIV. The violence also has a serious immoral outcomes. If someone feels unsafe at school, if someone feels like they will not be protected, they might not be able to focus on their studies. They might want to avoid school. They might achieve below their potential because they're just not able to focus with so much happening around them. Or they might drop out of school completely because it is too much for them. Now, coming upon how do we prevent this kind of gender-based violence within schools? How do we ensure that schools are a safe place for everyone who is attending them? So it's important to address this issue correctly with young, impressionable students. School-based gender violence is an extremely complex issue. It involves a lot of stakeholders, the parents, the teachers, the schools, administration. Everyone needs to come together to ensure that children receive the correct information and they make learning environments a safe space for them. So students should be taught in a certain way and certain topics in order to prevent sexual related, school related gender based violence. It is important to make changes in the curriculum, to take a look upon what we are teaching to the students, to develop a curriculum that prevents violence and promotes gender equality. It promotes gender sensitization, training teachers to give them tools to prevent and respond to this kind of violence in school, which in a way all of you are doing by attending this workshop, by listening to these things. You are equipping yourself with information that will help you dealing with students, talking with them about these things, and addressing these issues if they come up in your classrooms. Then it is also important for schools to develop safe spaces where these interventions can take place, to hold workshops, to hold talks, to hold discussions about these things, where students can ask whatever they want to and teachers can talk to them freely about these things. Coming to, this is about prevention. How do we prevent this kind of violence? But what do we do in case it has already happened? In case that this violence has already happened, there should be a clear, safe, and accessible procedure for people to follow, for people to report these incidents, for people to seek help if something like this has happened. So children need to feel safe. When you undergo something like this, when you undergo any kind of violence, it is very difficult to come up to someone and talk about it. Therefore, children need to feel safe that if they go and talk to one of their teachers, if they go and talk to their school administration, they will be helped. They need to be able to trust their teachers, to trust the people around them, and they need to have confidence that the school will help them and that the school will protect them. So, it's important that you provide easily accessible, child sensitive, and confidential reporting mechanisms where someone can just go and confidentially report that this has happened to me and I need help. Also, after someone comes up to us and tells us that this has happened and I need help, it is also important that we provide them with some kind of psychological counseling and we give them constant support so that they're able to deal with this. And I also want to take a moment and thank all of you for being here and taking a step towards ensuring that your school is inclusive and it's safe for everyone. Now I will hand it over to Anagha and she will talk about the concept of gender inclusivity.
Thank you, Shruti. So till now we were talking about how gender is considered to be a binary and how we try to put people into these boxes. So what is it all about? What we are aiming for? It's all about inclusion, right? Acceptance. So the binary system that we were talking about, the binary system is based on restrictive or like it is very limited and it is very restrictive also. It's a restrictive stereotypes about how men and women are supposed to behave or how they should act. And this can be extremely damaging for individuals who struggle or who are not able to fit into these boxes, who are unable to mold and fit into these binaries. Okay, so the expectations that come with the binary system can cause negative attitudes, prejudices, and discrimination towards individuals who display gender variance also or non-conformity, like when they are not able to identify themselves with any of these binaries. So when there exists this binary systems, we usually consider people who's not able to identify with this binary system to be deviants or to be like an outcast, right? So yeah, so and also people who doesn't identify their gender in line with their assigned sex at birth. Okay? So the solution or what we is an inclusive society or inclusive beliefs about gender. So how can this be accommodated? What are the steps? Okay, so the inclusive beliefs about the gender. Some of the beliefs are number one, understand that gender is a spectrum. Okay, there is a range of gender identities between between and outside this continuum, like male and female, this is a continuum. There are multiple points or range of gender identities that fall in between, and also categories that doesn't fall into these categories but exist outside this continuum. Okay, that is number one. Number two, gender identity development happens from birth until death. It keeps changing. Okay, it is bound to change. It develops. It's a dynamic concept. Okay, and third, gender is a product of the mind. So it is a result of how our nature, nurture, and context influences us. Okay, it is not necessarily to be, it is not full, it is not based on the sex that is assigned to us when we are born. Okay, and the fourth one is there is no such correct style or a correct way of expression of how a male should be or how a female should be, or how people belong to any of the genders should be. There is no such standard scale or a corrective scale that everyone should follow. It is all about how we feel like expressing. It is healthy for people to express like the way they feel. Okay, and fifth one is uh, not being able to identify with these any of these gender or non-conforming with any of the gender identities or being a transgender or is completely normal and healthy. Please keep in mind these points and understand. Now, coming to the solutions, how can we fight these gender stereotypes? So, we were talking about few gender stereotypes and how it affects each one of us in our lives, especially the students in classrooms, etc. So, how can we fight these gender stereotypes? So, if you look at around you, you will probably see a lot of gender stereotypes that is happening around you. Okay, you might also have seen or experienced in your personal life a lot of sexism or discrimination, inequality based on gender. Okay, there are ways to challenge these stereotypes, help everyone, and no matter their gender or gender identity, feel equal and valued as people. Okay, so some of the ways to break these stereotypes are: number one, check your baggage. Okay, reflect on your preconceived attitudes or fears regarding to gender norms. So I know mostly like most of the time it comes unconsciously, like unconscious biases that we have or unconscious stereotypes, like that kind of in group out group bias that we have. Most of them are unconscious, but take a moment, look at the issue and understand, evaluate, am I doing it right? Okay, so it is high time that we all should reflect on our own preconceived attitudes and fears regarding to these norms that exist in the society, gender conformity, and also our attitude towards people belonging to different gender identities. Okay, second one, educate yourself. So always try to stay on top of the current social, political, and any type of cultural events related to gender issues. Okay, read upon it, understand, like what is gender, how are the issues, what are the issues that is happening in the society, are gender roles being reinforced or deconstructed. Okay, third one is challenge yourself. So when we understand that, okay, I am having these kind of stereotypes, I am having these kind of preconceived notions or attitudes, challenge it. Challenge your own stereotypes and expectations around gender. Challenge your own judgments about people who don't conform to rigid gender stereotypes either by their clothes, the way they talk, the way they express themselves, their mannerisms, interest, any kind of orientation, etc. Okay. Fourth one is point it out. So whenever, like, as you might be knowing, like our society is very common, well, with showing gender inequality, sexism, discrimination, and it has become very usual in our society. So whenever you see any kind of such sexism or discrimination, point it out. Okay, when you read a magazine or you see a TV shows or a movie, call them out. Okay, point it out, saying that this is wrong. Okay, this is discriminatory, so that it is helpful for you as well as for the society also. The people who doesn't understand, like I said, it all happens, most of it happens unconsciously. Okay, so we might not be knowing it, so that it is discriminatory. Okay, so by pointing it out, it is actually helpful for you as well as for the society. Okay, now challenge others also, like confront when people make sexist jokes or homophobic jokes or attitudes or action of others, challenge them, confront them, tell them this is wrong. Okay, so share with your friends or family members that what you have learned, like from the previous one what we said, while reading or addressing an issue, share with them what you have learned, what you have understood. Okay, now, next is make no assumptions. This is very, very important. Like I said before, also, when we see a person, we immediately look for gender cues, right? Gender cues and assume, okay, this person belongs to this gender based on the gender cues that we make automatically make on our mind. Okay, so do not assume their gender. Do not make assumptions based on these gender cues. Also, do not make assumptions about their interests or their likings also. Like, for example, if there is a contest or anything related to makeup happening, okay, so makeup contest or anything related to makeup, we immediately associate it with girls. So we look for girls to participate in, or we organize that event for girls, right? So this is also a kind of a stereotype. So like the assumption that we make that, okay, if we conduct something like this, more girls will join. No, do not make such kind of assumptions. Do not assume that all boys or girls will have the same interest or learn the same way, or there is only one right way to be a male or a female or a trans or any gender identity for that matter. Okay. Now, consider the idea that gender is not a binary. Next is practice. Practice, practice, practice. Yes. Seize opportunities to use non gender specific language. It's very, very important. So, by practicing, by we being a role model or practicing gender inclusive practices, like for example languages that we use, instead of ladies and gentlemen or boys or girls, you can simply use everyone or people of all genders, or just informally you can just address the gathering as hey folks. Like those are gender neutral pronouns, right? So when we take a step towards something like that, when we use gender neutral pronouns, it actually shows our inclusiveness, our acceptance of all gender identities. Okay. Next is be a living example. So be a role model for your friends and family. Respect people regardless of their gender identity, and also try to create a safe space to express themselves and their true qualities, regardless of what society's gender stereotypes and expectations are. Okay. And next point is give it a try. Like if you want to do something that's not usually associated with the gender, just if you think that it is safe or you will be safe, give it a try, because that initiative of yours can be an inspiration to a lot of people who are struggling with this. Okay. Now, the last point is show your support. This is also very, very important. Continue to attend events or show your support towards the people, regardless of their gender, and attend workshops and training related to different gender identities, the problems that they are facing, like Shruti said, gender violence, gender based violences, or how gender identities or labeling them into these boxes affect their mental health. So, by understanding these issues that is faced by the queer community, the LGBT issues, show your support by including them and by accepting them as who they are. Okay? Now, next slide, how can I tell a person's gender? Okay, so earlier we were talking about we already said that we always look for gender cues to understand that person's gender, right? This is wrong. So how can we identify a person's gender? Ask them. It's completely normal to ask them. just ask for pronouns, like, may I know your pronouns? You can simply ask for their pronouns, and it's high time we should normalize asking pronouns also. So it's okay if you can't identify a person's gender when you first meet. It's important not to judge or not to assume someone based on the gender the person uses to identify themselves. We usually assume a person's gender identity based on how they dress or how they act or how they behave, or how they look. Okay, but some people's gender identity do not match with how they dress or look. So it is important that we need to ask them, like, very very respectfully. You can ask, I want to be respectful how you identify, so could you please tell me which pronouns you use? This is completely normal to ask. So in such a way, it is you're actually creating a safe space for the people belong to different gender identity. Also, you're including them. You're creating a safe space for them. You're supporting them. Okay. So yeah. Now coming to the next slide. I hope there is a problem with that also. Can we move to the previous slide? Okay, I guess there is a technical issue. Okay, now, like I said, ask for pronouns to understand a person's gender. Now, uh, what should I do if a student says, I don't feel like either a boy or a girl, or how I feel doesn't match my body? I guess Shruti wanted to talk about this. Shruti?
Yeah. So, as educators, when we're talking about making schools inclusive, when we're talking about creating a safe space for children to come up to us and talk to us about whatever they're feeling, it is very, very possible that a child who trusts us comes up to us and tells us that, I don't feel like a boy, or I don't feel like a girl, or how I feel does not match my body. What do I do? And we're put in a position where we have to give them support, and we have to give them some kind of help. So lots of people have qualities which are associated with a different gender. If someone feels that their gender identity does not fit neatly into a boy or a girl category, it's okay. It's important for us to remember that these feelings are okay and they're valid. They may choose to dress or style their hair in a way that matches how they feel. And as they figure out what feels right for them, seeking the support of a trusted adult is something which is very, very, it can be very, very fulfilling for them. It can be very extremely helpful. And this is where all of us coming. This is where us as educators, as psychologists, as people who are working with children, all of us have a role to play here. If a child feels like their body does not match how they feel inside, then the best step would definitely is to talk to an adult that they can trust. And in this case, if someone comes up to us, they've taken this step of trusting someone, going up to someone, talking to them about it, and they're taking this step by coming to you. They've put you in a position of responsibility here. It's important that if someone comes up to us with these issues and if someone wants to talk about these things, it's important for us to treat them with the utmost respect and warmth. We are in no position to trivialize their feelings, to say that, you're just a child, you don't know these things, you don't know what gender is, you don't know what sexuality is. It's important for us to put them in a position of respect, to trust that they know what they are feeling. We cannot trivialize their feelings. We can question the seriousness of their feelings. The first step should always be to support them. Their feelings. They're coming to us. They're talking about it. We need to be able to applaud them for trusting us. We need to be able to applaud them for making this decision about themselves and trusting us and coming up to us and talking about how they feel. People who feel like their bodies do not match how they feel inside, they may identify as transgender or trans. Explain to them what the terms mean. You have to be there for them constantly and give them all the information that they might need in order to discover themselves, in order to discover if it is really what they are, if it's something that they are, if it's an idea that they're just exploring for now. Assure them that they can get help figuring out how to have what they feel inside reflected on the outside with the help of trusted adults, with the help of parents, counselors, doctors, and ensure them that there is a lot of help for them. Ensure them that they are not alone. Ensure them that they will receive help. Coming out and talking about these things is not easy. And it is something which is very daunting. It is something which is very uncomfortable. And it is important at this stage that we let a child know that they are not alone, that they will have our support, they will have our trust, they will have our acceptance no matter what. Help them feel understood and it help them feel safe. A little acceptance and support from us as educators, because we're dealing with children, we are in a position of authority, we are in a position of power. And if we show them acceptance, if we put them in that safe space, it can go a long way in their journey to figure out who they are, in their journey to figure out where they fit in into this society and be true to their identity. Okay, so I think that's all for today. I would just say that thank you everyone for being here, for listening to all of this, for staying with us through all of the technical issues. If Siddharth or anyone else wants to say something, I'll leave it open for them.
Yeah, thanks, Tanya.
Yeah, I would like to say that the whole point of the session was to create inclusion acceptance. What we all are aiming for is a classroom where all students can learn to their full potential, or they can continue their education without gender being a barrier. So it is the parents or the schools are primary agents of socialization. That's what students learns or starting about things. So it is our responsibility to make them a responsible, just, and a politically correct citizens of the nations. So yeah, Siddharth, you can continue.
Yeah, thanks Shruti and Anagha for such an insightful session. Thank you all Senic School faculty for participating, and I would also like to thank Colonel Rajesh from Senic School, who's acting as the nodal officer for this, for giving us the opportunity to interact with the teachers and trying our best to go forward in our mission of sensitizing students and educators all around the country. Thank you so much, guys.